General for the DOJ. It's just what he did during the discrimination case when Donald Trump and his father were found guilty of discriminating against minorities. And it was Roy Cohn who went out and said outrageous things, attacking the DOJ and the FBI and accusing them of being spies, accusing them of being undercover agents. He literally is parroting. I mean, you've got Republicans parroting Vladimir Putin. You literally have William Barr parroting one of the most despicable creatures of the 20th century in American politics. The man who made McCarthyism possible, but he's parroting Roy Cohn. So Donald Trump has found his Roy Cohn.
Well, let's go to Attorney General William Barr's exclusive interview with NBC News. Despite the findings of the Justice Department's Inspector General report, he still claims that the FBI may have operated out of bad faith when it investigated the Trump campaign in 2016. Speaking with NBC's Pete Williams, Barr essentially dismissed the IG's conclusion that there was no evidence of political bias when the FBI launched its Russia probe, arguing that his hand-picked prosecutor, John Durham, will have the final say. Barr also stood by his assertion that the Trump campaign was spied on.
I think our nation was turned on its head for 3 years. I think based on a completely bogus narrative that was largely fanned and hyped by an irresponsible press. And I think that there were gross abuses of FISA and inexplicable behavior that is intolerable in the FBI. In one area, I do disagree with the IG, and that was whether there was sufficient predication to open a full-blown counterintelligence investigation, specifically using the techniques that they did to collect intelligence about the Trump campaign. The core statement, in my opinion, by the IG is that these irregularities, these misstatements, these omissions were not satisfactorily explained. And I think that leaves open the possibility to infer bad faith.
Do you still stand by your statement that the campaign was spied upon?
Oh, it's clearly spied upon. I mean, that's what electronic surveillance is. I think wiring people up to go in and talk to people and make recordings of their conversations is spying. I think going through people's emails, which they did as a result of the FISA warrant, they went through everything.
I don't know where to begin, Willie, but so here is, let me find this really quickly while it's not going to work for me, so I'm very challenged this morning, technology-wise. Yeah. But again, you heard him talking about them being spied on, the FBI. Again, this is the language that Roy Cohn used, attacking the DOJ and the FBI back in the 1970s when the federal government caught Donald Trump and his father discriminating against minorities. And he's doing the same thing, but he's the Attorney General of the United States. He talked about a bogus narrative for 3 years, a bogus narrative, and he blamed it on an irresponsible press. Willie, I don't have to remind you of the fact that the President of the United States' first national security advisor found guilty of a felony. The president's campaign manager found guilty of a felony and will probably spend the rest of his life in jail. The president's longtime lawyer and fixer found guilty. He was in the middle of that illegal hush money scheme that violated FEC laws. The president's assistant campaign manager found guilty. And the same with a man that he claimed was one of his top foreign policy advisors, found guilty. We could go through the numbers. They are absolutely astounding. The number of people connected to Donald Trump who were found guilty of a federal crime, spending time in jail, and are turned state's evidence against other people in the administration. And of course, Roger Stone found guilty. Willie, he continues his war on the Department of Justice. This was the work of the Department of Justice, not the deep state. And these were federal judges. These were federal judges that found these men guilty. And yet he's talking about how he's blaming all of this on, quote, an irresponsible press. He's projecting when he talks about inexplicable behavior that is intolerable. He actually should direct that back at the man who he's working for, Donald Trump.
And speaking of projecting, how about calling this a bad faith investigation? Again, he's talking about a deep state conspiracy. He is effectively, as the Attorney General of the United States, echoing Donald Trump's claims that this was all a deep state conspiracy, despite all the convictions you laid out, despite all the good faith investigation by the men and women of our intelligence services, the men and women of the FBI. He, on the very day that the IG report came out from his own Justice Department, he sat down with Pete Williams to do a breathtaking interview where he undermined every piece of that IG report, again, from his own Justice Department. And David Ignatius, if that's not bad faith, I don't know what is. He knows better than to say that a FISA-approved surveillance program is, quote, spying. He knows better than all this, but again, he views his first job now as defending the President of the United States.
Willie, like you and Joe, I felt that Attorney General Barr really crossed a line in his comments yesterday. For all his partisanship, seeming partisanship before, this was different. And the reason it was different was that he was attacking not enemies in Congress, not even really the press. He was attacking his own Justice Department Inspector General's report and publicly disagreeing with it and making wild allegations of bad faith, not supported, against the people who lead our nation's key law enforcement and investigative agency. It was an extraordinary thing for an attorney general to do. That job in our government is different. And if people can't rely on the attorney general to back up the orderly process whereby the department investigates its own, that's what the inspector general does, something is really broken. He's now going to turn to his handpicked prosecutor, Durham, who's already come out with his own statement rebutting the inspector general's report, of saying that he disagrees. He's laying down his marker. My fear is that we are now heading into conflicting legal narratives of what happened. We're already in danger of becoming a country with two versions of what's going on in our politics. That seems now to be embedded at the Justice Department itself, and it's really dangerous.
You know, it is really dangerous. And Mika, you and I, for the past 3 years, have had a debate on whether America's institutions will be sufficient to check Donald Trump in a way where we'll be strong or even stronger from this challenge on the other side. And I've always said our institutions will check him. Madisonian democracy will check him. I'm not a big believer in going in and talking about constitutional conventions or changing this part of the government or that part of the government. I will say 3 years in that the one area where our system obviously needs to be checked has to do with the appointing of an attorney general. And I was saying this before Barr became the attorney general. I think there has to be a higher, forgive the pun, a higher bar to becoming attorney general of the United States. Maybe it's a 2/3 vote in the Senate to select and remove somebody. We just can't have any president having an attorney general who will protect them from criminal actions that they've taken. We're no better than some, some banana republic right now, and that's exactly what Donald Trump and William Barr are moving us towards. There has to be a higher threshold for somebody becoming Attorney General of the United States. That is the one area of reform that I think a lot of people are going to be looking at when Donald Trump leaves office.